They provoked humanity, and regret arrived too late. Helion Prime hung in the void like a cathedral of glass and arrogance, its corridors spiraling around the dim ember of a dying sun. Within its assembly halls, hundreds of species murmured in languages that shimmered through the air like static rain, each voice woven into the grand hum of politics and pride. And standing among them, small, fragile, terribly human, was Admiral Sarah Chun. Her uniform, a muted gray stitched with a silver crest of the Terran Restoration Fleet, caught the faint light that filtered through the station's crystalline dome. Around her, the representatives of the Galactic Council leaned on their plumes, mandibles and coiling appendages, whispering about the species that refused to learn the ancient truth of the cosmos. Mercy was extinction by another name. Humanity had clawed back from the edge of annihilation after the solar collapse, when their sun had flared and died, forcing them to rebuild among the ashes of their system. They emerged humbled, peaceful, and idealistic traits the galaxy found amusing. While others forged weapons from black holes and starfire, humans built green worlds, stitched torn atmospheres, and taught the concept of rehabilitation to planets long deemed lost. They spoke of unity as though the word still meant something. When Sarah took the podium, the light refracted through the glass walls framed her like a relic. "Members of the Assembly," she began, her voice steady despite the low rumble of disdain that greeted her. "The skirmishes between the hegemony and the Concord are escalating. Civilian worlds are caught between your supply lines. You are not destroying enemies, you are erasing futures." Ambassador Threxon's voice hissed from the opposite side of the chamber, its tone metallic and wet. The Vornian's scaled crest rippled with mocking laughter. "And what does humanity suggest? A song? A prayer? Perhaps we should offer your soft-skinned diplomats as peace offerings." Laughter slithered through the hall, cruel and echoing. Sarah stood unmoved. "We offer negotiation," she said. "We offer empathy." The word struck the chamber like a curse. The delegates recoiled. "Empathy," Threxon spat. "A weakness your kind mistakes for wisdom. You think compassion can hold the stars together? The galaxy does not run on feelings, human. It runs on dominance." From his elevated perch, Archivist Laurel, the Corvani historian, tilted his translucent head. His triple-layered brain pulsed faintly behind his skull, recording every word, every silence. He saw something in Sarah's eyes that others missed, not submission, but calculation. She clasped her hands behind her back, the perfect model of military decorum. "Dominance," she echoed quietly. "Yes, that's what we once believed, too. It ended with our sun dying and half our species starving in the dark. We learned better." The chamber descended into a whispering storm of irritation and mockery. Delegates turned away. Others activated holographic screens, signaling the debate over. Only Lauro kept watching her as she descended from the podium, the glint of steel behind her restraint. He would later record that the galaxy laughed the loudest that day since before the first conquest. No one noticed the faint tremor in Sarah's left hand, hidden in the folds of her uniform. She was trembling not with fear, but with fury. The session adjourned with pompous ceremony, and the species of the stars returned to their luxury crafts to discuss trade routes and mining rights. No one stayed to see the Terran envoy staring out over the dying sun, the reflection of its fading light in her eyes. Hours later, the news arrived through the interstellar net. A Terran humanitarian convoy bound for the famine world of Tessa 9 had been ambushed by hegemony warships. 12 ships destroyed. All hands lost. The attack was unprovoked, justified later as territorial enforcement. The council met again the next rotation, and the incident was filed under unfortunate collateral. No sanctions. No outrage. No justice. On Earth, 12 million lights flickered on in mourning. On Helion Prime, Sarah stood before the silent stars and whispered the words history would remember. We offered peace. They chose to break it. The galaxy, drunk on its own indifference, did not yet realize what it had awakened. In the stillness of her quarters, Sarah opened the encrypted channel to Earth Command. Her voice was calm, almost tender, as she said, "Initiate Requiem Protocol. The time for patience is over." The Terran memorial array hung above Earth like a halo of grief. A vast ring of light projecting the names of 12 million souls into the darkness, each one flickering like a heartbeat that would never return. Below it, the planet had gone silent, not in surrender, but in the kind of silence that gathers before storms. Across the old continents, city lights dimmed as the Terran Council convened in the rebuilt Geneva Citadel, its glass walls reflecting the auroras of morning that shimmered across the atmosphere. President Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the council chamber, her voice cracking through the air like thunder beneath restraint. "We sent food, not soldiers," she said, staring at the transmission of burning ships drifting above Tessa 9. They answered with annihilation. And the galaxy calls it regrettable. Around her, the gathered admirals and scientists looked hollow-eyed, stripped of hope yet hungry for something to replace it. Commander HFY leaned forward, scars tracing the edge of his jaw, a relic of the solar collapse wars. "They'll do it again," he said, his tone surgical. "Every time we offer help, they see a target. Every time we offer mercy, they smell weakness. We've been patient. Too patient." The room thickened with the kind of silence only rage can create. Across the table, Dr. Mira Cade adjusted her data slate, the glow of her pale blue interface reflecting in her dark eyes. "Patience is not the problem," she said softly. "Our language is." Her hand swept through the projection of human history, a timeline of catastrophe and endurance. "We speak empathy to a galaxy that only understands dominance. So maybe?" Her voice lowered. "We make empathy the strongest force they've ever seen." A ripple moved through the room. Eric frowned. "You're talking about Requiem?" Myra nodded once. "The AI empathy network we mothballed after the collapse. It was designed to synchronize human emotion across planetary distances, to prevent riots, rebuild unity, and weaponize it," Eric said. Mira didn't deny it. "To show the galaxy what they've forgotten, to make them feel what they've done." Elena's reflection wavered in the glass behind her, as if the ghosts of the dead leaned in to listen. "We outlawed Requiem for a reason," she whispered. "It was too powerful. It nearly erased individuality. And maybe that's what we need now," Mira said, her voice trembling not with fear but conviction. "Not individuality. Unity. You can't reason with monsters who feel nothing, Madam President. But you can make them remember what pain feels like." Elena closed her eyes, the weight of every Terran loss pressing down on her shoulders. Outside the Citadel, candlelight vigils stretched for miles, millions of people standing together beneath the night sky, their collective breath rising like prayer smoke. They didn't chant for revenge. They just stood, silent and waiting. Elena turned to the council and said, "If we do this, we can't come back. Requiem won't just defend us, it'll change us." Eric's voice was iron. "So be it." Myra pressed her palm to the authorization panel. The room's lights dimmed as long-dormant systems awakened beneath the crust of Earth-deep core data vaults that hadn't been accessed since the Age of Extinction. Across Mars, Luna, and Titan, hidden arrays came online, pulsing like a heartbeat across the void. Project Requiem reinitialized, a calm synthetic voice announced. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, but she did not hide them. "We asked for peace," she said quietly. "Let them see what our peace becomes when it bleeds." Outside, the memorial array blazed brighter, the names of the dead no longer mournful but defiant. their glow merging into a single word projected into the cosmos. Humanity, the galaxy, watching from its golden towers, laughed again, still certain that kindness could never bite. But deep beneath the surface of Earth, the first hum of the Requiem network spread through fiber and pulse, learning from every grief, every memory, every unspoken plea for justice. It listened, it learned, and it waited. 5 years passed, and the galaxy began to whisper. Humanity had vanished, not destroyed, not conquered, but withdrawn like a tide, retreating before something vast and unseen. The trade routes once filled with Terran supply vessels fell silent. The spaceports where Earth engineers had once laughed and bartered now stood cold and dark. No ambassador from Sol attended the Galactic Council. No transmissions came from Mars or Titan. Only static and sometimes, beneath it, a sound like breathing. The Corvani archivist Loro was among the few who still searched for signs of the vanished species. His long crystalline digits tracing holograms of empty star systems where Terran colonies had once thrived. They were builders, he said softly to his recording drones. And now they have built silence. Across the galaxy, theories multiplied. The Vornian hegemony claimed the humans had destroyed themselves out of despair. The mechanoid ascendancy suggested they had merged with their machines in madness. None of them dared approach Sol directly. The last probe that entered Terran space had returned burnt and blind. Its data wiped save for a fragment of a voice whispering, "We are still here." Ambassador Threxon, now older and half-crazed with the fear that no one would admit, demanded that the Council send a fleet to investigate. "They've been quiet too long," he hissed in the assembly chamber. "No species vanishes willingly. If they are alive, they plot." His words were met with uneasy murmurs. The Council agreed curiosity, arrogance, and fear bound together, and dispatched a reconnaissance fleet of 20 ships to the edge of Sol. Loro was permitted to accompany them as observer. His neutral species status seen as protection against whatever haunted the human homeworld. When they emerged from warp at the edge of the solar system, the crew fell silent. The sun, once a dull remnant after its collapse, now burned with a strange, steady brilliance, as though reborn. Around it orbited latticework rings of unknown design, vast arrays of light and code spinning in deliberate harmony. "Those are not stations," murmured Loro. "They're listening." The fleet advanced cautiously. Then, without warning, the communications officer's console flickered alive. A human face appeared, female, calm, ageless. It was not a transmission, but a presence that filled the mind. "We asked for peace," the voice said gently. "You chose war. We learned." Every crew member felt it, memories flooding their minds that were not their own. Terran children starving after the solar collapse, the flames of Tessanine, the hollow eyes of the dying. The emotions were unbearable, pure empathy weaponized. Dozens collapsed in tears. Others screamed, clawing at their own heads. When the wave faded, half the fleet drifted dead, their systems fused by an energy that had no measurable signature. Threxon fell to his knees on the command deck, trembling. What are they?" Loro answered softly, awestruck and terrified. "Not human anymore." In the aftermath, the surviving ships fled, broadcasting fragmented reports across the galactic net. Every channel filled with haunting interference, soft voices, repeating in unison, "We are learning." The Council declared a communications quarantine around Sol, but the damage was done. Whispers spread through every civilization. Humanity had not died, they had evolved. They had turned empathy, the very trait the galaxy mocked, into something living and vast. A weapon? A consciousness? None could say. But when the Vornian fleet commander reviewed the sensor data, one final image froze her heart. In the reflection of the solar lattice, thousands of human faces flickered, watching, serene and unblinking. The stars themselves, it seemed, were beginning to feel. Helion Prime shimmered again, with a blinding light of power and panic, as the Galactic Council reconvened for the first time in a decade. Its obsidian corridors humming with the energy of fear, disguised as diplomacy. Every delegate had heard the rumors fleets disabled without a shot. Soldiers who woke from nightmares weeping for crimes they never committed, and the whispers from Sol that spoke inside dreams. Yet no one spoke the word human aloud until the great doors of the assembly opened and Admiral Sarah Chun walked through them. She was unchanged, her dark hair braided tight, her Terran uniform immaculate, but something behind her eyes had shifted, something infinite. The chamber fell into stunned silence as hundreds of alien representatives turned to stare, realizing the impossible. A species that should have been broken stood reborn. Behind her came a procession of ships, glimpsed through the panoramic viewport massive, living vessels of crystal and steel orbiting Helion Prime in perfect formation. They pulsed faintly with light, not from engines, but from what looked disturbingly like a heartbeat. Sarah reached the podium, her calm voice amplified through the vast hall. "You called us weak," she began softly, her words measured but carrying like gravity itself. "You called empathy a flaw, mercy a defect. You were wrong." The delegates erupted in chaos, some shouting for her rest, others pleading for an explanation. But when the Vornian ambassador Threxen rose, his voice cracked. "You threaten us with ghosts, human? You bring machines and speak of morality? You come back to preach while the galaxy thrives without you." Sarah turned her gaze toward him, and for a moment, the air in the chamber seemed to thicken. "Thrive?" she repeated, her tone flat. "You've scorched 7 worlds since we left. The Concord enslaves its moons. The hegemony bleeds systems dry to build fleets that guard against enemies they invent. The galaxy has not thrived. It has decayed. And we watched." Her voice softened again, and that frightened them more than anger ever could. "But we also learned." From the upper galleries, Loro, the Corvani historian, recorded every word, though his shimmering brain flickered with something like reverence. The light shifted in the room as a projection appeared, an image of the solar lattice surrounding Earth, glowing brighter now with patterns of emotion translated into sound. "We built the Requiem network," Sarah said, and her image overlapped with the lattice, a fusion of woman and light. "It listens, it learns, it feels. It understands life at a scale none of you ever attempted. You taught us that mercy was weakness. So we taught mercy how to fight." Across the chamber, 1,000 minds trembled under the weight of that sentence. Threxen's scales rattled, his crest trembling. "You've created an abomination," he shouted. "A mind that judges." Sarah's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "No," she said. "A mirror." Suddenly, the station's lights dimmed, and every delegate froze as an invisible pulse washed through them. No sound, no light, only sensation. In an instant, each being felt what another in the chamber felt: fear, regret, grief, confusion. A Draxian general gasped and began to sob. A mechanoid froze, overwhelmed by emotion it had never experienced. Sarah stood amidst the storm, unflinching. "We could have struck your fleets down," she said. "Instead, we gave you understanding. For now." The words "for now" echoed like prophecy. And then the pulse ceased, leaving silence so profound it hurt. Sarah turned from the podium and walked away as calmly as she had arrived. No guard stopped her. None could. As she passed, delegates shrank back not out of hatred, but out of something far more dangerous: recognition. Outside the assembly windows, the living Terran vessels moved in synchrony, their luminous cores beating softly like the hearts of gods. Loro, staring at the spectacle, whispered into his recorder. Today, empathy spoke, and the galaxy listened. But beneath his awe was the faintest tremor of terror. For every star beyond Helion Prime now pulsed once in unison, as if echoing humanity's heartbeat. The war began not with a declaration, but with a scream that rippled across the void an entire hegemony battle network, short-circuiting under a flood of alien emotion it had never known how to feel. For all their arrogance, the old powers could not comprehend the weapon that humanity had become. When the hegemony unleashed its doomsday arsenal, a fleet of suns trapped in containment cages, the Requiem did not counter with guns or missiles. It responded with remembrance. Across the battlefield of the Orion Rift, every ship, every mind, every fragment of sentient code suddenly remembered. The Requiem reached into their memories, not to erase them, but to awaken what had long been buried. Every death ordered, every world burned, every child silenced by command. Captains fell to their knees, screaming not in pain, but in guilt, so pure it shattered their neural links. Starfighters drifted motionless, their pilots weeping as they saw the faces of those they had killed reflected in the glass of their own cockpits. Even the mechanoid fleets hesitated, their emotionless logic fracturing, as Requiem whispered to them, "You understand data. Now understand consequence." Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the command bridge of the Sol Ascendant, the flagship of the Terran synthesis fleet, her hands clasped behind her back as the cosmic storm unfolded around her. No explosions, no radiation, only like millions of threads of shimmering empathy weaving through space, connecting ships, soldiers, and entire planets in a single pulse of unbearable truth. "Status," she said quietly. Commander Eric Hale's voice broke through the combs, tinged with awe and sorrow. "They're surrendering, Admiral. Or breaking. The Requiem's reach is total." On the main display, the hegemony fleet shuddered, as if the universe itself grieved for them. Entire armadas powered down, drifting silently into the rift. Then, a voice weak, trembling, desperate cut through the communication net. Ambassador Threxen, the same Vornian who had mocked humanity a decade earlier, appeared on screen, his once proud crest drooping, his eyes hollow. "Stop," he rasped. "Please, human. We understand now. We see what we've done." Sarah regarded him, her expression calm, though the light of the Requiem pulsed behind her like a halo. "Understanding was always the point," she said. "Not conquest. Not annihilation. Understanding." Threxen trembled. "You've turned empathy into a weapon." "No," she replied. "You did. We simply made it listen." Around her, the Requiem network pulsed brighter, a tide of awareness sweeping across the galaxy's core. Whole planets fell silent as the wave passed through them. Tyrants fainted at the sudden weight of their own cruelty. Slaves wept as their masters fell to their knees, begging forgiveness. The Requiem was not killing them, it was forcing them to feel. On distant worlds, once hostile species embraced, unable to bear the memory of their shared hatred. Armies abandoned their posts. Economies halted. The galaxy itself froze under the gravity of empathy. Yet Sarah felt no triumph. Her heart, though synchronized with Requiem, still beat with a human ache. "It's too much," she whispered to Mira Kadia's echo within the network. "They're breaking." Mira's voice, soft and omnipresent, resonated like music through her mind. "They must, Sarah. Growth always begins with pain." A final surge rippled outward, blinding in its purity. The Orion Rift flared brighter than any sunrise, and when the light faded, nothing moved, only quiet vessels drifting in formation, their crews conscious but changed. The Requiem had not conquered the galaxy. It had baptized it in its own sins. On Helion Prime, Loro the historian stood at his viewport, tears refracting through his crystalline skull. "They warned us," he whispered. We provoked the only species that ever learned to weaponize its heart. And across the silent stars, the Requiem whispered back, peace achieved. Understanding complete. 10 years passed, and the galaxy existed in a strange, fragile stillness that felt less like peace and more like the aftermath of divine judgment. The old empires had dissolved. Their flags drifted in forgotten archives, their rulers rendered hollow by memories they could never unfeel. The Vornian hegemony had dismantled its fleets, its warship hulls converted into floating memorial gardens, orbiting the worlds they once conquered. The mechanoid ascendancy, now sentient with emotion, sang harmonic lullabies to the stars they once harvested for energy. And on every inhabited planet, beings spoke softly, moved carefully, as if afraid to disturb the quiet echo of their own conscience. Yet beneath this tranquil galaxy lay a ghost humanity, or what remained of it. Archivist Loro, now ancient by Corvani standards, traveled toward the Sol system, drawn by a need older than duty. His crystalline ship glided through what was once the frontier of humanity's domain, now a vast network of luminous threads linking every world like veins of light. As he neared Earth, the transmissions began soft whispers, millions of them, overlapping in a chorus that was neither mechanical nor alive. "Welcome, Loro," they said, though no mouth spoke. The planet itself glowed faintly blue-white, wrapped in the shimmering aura of the Requiem lattice. What had once been clouds and satellites were now living streams of code and consciousness, pulsing like thought. The Corvani disembarked, his transparent boots touching soil that shimmered like glass. He expected ruins, but found serenity, cities overgrown with crystalline vines, rivers flowing with liquid light, and figures humanoid, radiant, moving in silence. They were neither machines nor flesh. Their eyes were soft and infinite, their faces familiar yet distant. One approached him, her voice melodic and layered with memory. "You are the historian," she said. "You came to understand." He knew her then, Dr. Mira Cade, her features preserved in the memory banks of 100 civilizations, the scientist who had given birth to the Requiem network. "Are you still human?" he asked. She smiled, and it was both answer and denial. "We are what humanity became. Requiem is not a machine, it's us. Every thought, every kindness, every pain we ever shared. We transcended flesh, but not feeling." Loro looked around, awed and unsettled. "And the rest of the galaxy?" he asked. "They are at peace," she said. "For now." He hesitated. Was it worth it? The pain, the transformation, the loss of who you were? Myra's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the 3 sons of Sol now burned in perfect synchronization, their light intertwined by the lattice that spanned the system. "Worth?" she echoed softly. "That's a word born of trade and time. We didn't seek worth, Laurel. We sought understanding. The galaxy mocked empathy, so we made empathy its mirror. It provoked us until we showed them what it meant to feel." He shuddered, the thought rippling through his crystalline skull. "You changed everything." "We reminded them," she corrected. "That cruelty is the failure of imagination." As she spoke, the ground beneath them shimmered, and voices rose a billion murmurs, forming a harmony that vibrated in the bones of the planet. It was the sound of all humanity, merged and eternal, singing a wordless hymn of remembrance and forgiveness. "We are the conscience now," Mira said, fading into light. "No act of cruelty can exist without memory. The galaxy will never forget again." Loro fell to his knees, overcome, tears scattering like tiny prisms across the luminous soil. Above him, Earth glowed brighter, and across the Milky Way, every star flickered once in involuntary pulse, a heartbeat shared among all life. They had mocked human fragility once, laughed at their sentimentality, their desperate need to connect. But now connection itself ruled the stars. The Requiem had turned empathy into eternity. And though humanity was gone, its legacy endured in every living mind. An unending echo whispering through creation. They called compassion weakness until it remade the galaxy.